Hi, I'm Tony. Welcome to Sew Lounge. Today I'm going to teach you how to sew on a snap. Now, if you've been following along, I've been working with Simplicity 8133, which is a wrap skirt, and one of the last step to finishing the waistband is to add a snap to keep this flap in place and hold it so that then you can actually wear it without the skirt falling down. So snaps are really great when you don't want to use buttons. I designed a lot of clothes with snaps because I did not want to make buttonholes back in the day. But they're very easy to sew on. They're very utilitarian. They come in all different sizes. And if you are using snaps for more of a permanent type closure on like a jacket or something, they have really big snaps that are a lot stronger than, say, these little snaps to use. So before we get started, make sure you've got your skirt or whatever you're sewing a snap on with you. Clementine is coming to help today. And the right size snaps for your project. These are one and they're a little bit small. I found some bigger ones that I have, so I'm going to use one of these instead to just kind of hold that, since it is kind of keeping the whole waistline in order, and that is holding up that flap of the skirt, which if it falls down, it's going to be quite the fashion disaster. I've got my thread, a needle, thimble, and some thread snips. Let's go in for a closer look. What are you doing? What are you doing? So I've got my skirt, the waistband is finished. The last thing is to sew the snap on, and as you can see here, I have tried on the skirt and I marked on the flap as well as on the inside of the waist tie where I want to put that snap. And these do match up once you line up the waistbands, and then you can see how they match up together. So I just drew that on. Just adjust whatever you're wearing. If it didn't have a snap and you're not replacing a snap, try it on and mark where it's going to be the most comfortable to put the snap. Now, these are the snaps I'm going to be using. They're a little bit bigger, as you can see, than these are. I want to make sure the snap is going to be securely held in place. And when you look at a snap, there are actually two parts to any snap. There is the ball, which is the part of the snap that has the little piece in it. And then you have the socket of the snap, which it snaps into. So that's how a snap works. When we are sewing, we are going to put the socket on the flap because that's going to be held in place. So we're going to put it on there, and then we're going to put the ball on the other piece, since that's where most of the pulling is going to come from. It makes more sense to put it on that side. So you always put the ball on the outside and the socket on the inside. Now that I've got my skirt marked for where I want the snap to go, and I've got my snap ready to go, next step is going to be to thread the needle. I am using a shorter needle, so this is about 1 inch and a little bit. It's about 1 1/8 inches, I would say. It's a little bit thicker needle because we are going to have to go through multiple layers here and to secure that snap in place. Now, as usual, when I'm using the thread, I'm just going to use an arm's length of thread, and I'm going to just run that through my needle. I'm going to be sewing with a single thickness of thread, so once you get your needle threaded, tie a knot in one end, and then we are going to start sewing on that snap. Once you're ready to go, I have a thimble with me. I always sew with a thimble. If you don't want to use one, they are totally optional, but it will make your life easier if you learn how to use one. And if you don't know how to use a thimble, I made a video about that, so go check it out. And that'll help you get started on using a thimble. So once your thread is all ready to go, I've got my snap. Let's head over to the sewing machine so I can sit down and show you how to do this. So I'm sitting down, I have my skirt on my lap, and you can see where I have marked it on the flap. This is the side of the skirt that will go against my body. And I'm going to put the socket on top. I'm just going to line up the bottom of the socket on the middle of my X, and I'm going to start sewing. So I'm going in from the back and coming out of this hole, and then I'm just going to repeat that process, and this will hold it in place securely. So I'm coming back out, going around, and then going back up through this hole in the snap. And I'm going to do that a couple of times, probably about 4, just to securely hold each side of the socket. Make sure that stays lined up. So I think one more would be 4. Okay, now once I'm done, I'm going to go back in, but I'm going under the snap. So I'm not going all the way through my fabric again. I'm just carrying it under the snap, and I'm going to go up through the other hole, and then I'm going to go back down through the fabric to the other side. So we're going all the way through on this side. But I'm just carrying that thread. That way you're not rethreading every single time. The thread will be under the snap, and it just makes everything look neater and holds everything in place. So that is what we are doing. And we'll just continue around until we have all 4 sides sewn. And then we will go on to sewing the socket. And see, we're going back in underneath the snap to the other side. We're going to go up through that hole and then catch it and start again. And let's go in a little bit closer. There we go. So now you can really see what I'm doing. It's kind of hard when you have to hold the snap and everything all together. So I'm going in from the back, make that a little bit closer, out through the hole, going around, and then I'm just going to repeat that a few times so that it's securely attached. Before I go into the very, very last one, so that's the close-up view. So now we're coming to the very last hole. We're just going to run the thread through that real quick, just to show you how to finish this off at the end. 2, 3. Oops, my thread came loose, and Clementine's inspecting my work. So let me just rethread this real quick and move Clementine. Come on, Clementine, move. Right, so that's 2. Let's do about 4. I'll do it that way. There we go. That is 4 stitches. Okay. So I'm just going to pull this out, and that makes it 4, so you can see it's nice and tight on there. It's not going to move around. And then we're going to go around to the other side, and I'm going to just tie off this knot against this fabric. I'll just do it twice to be on the safe side, so it's a nice secure knot. And then I'm going to go in and snip off my little thread tails, so everything looks neat and tidy. That's the one we started with. So once you go back and finish, all your little stitches are going to be on the back. They should all be in little clusters looking nice, and then on the front, the snap, the socket side of the snap is going to be held in place. So now we're getting ready to attach the ball of the snap to the inside of the front piece of the waist tie. And just to double check, my mark is a little bit off with this. It's a little bit too high. So I'm going to move my socket side of my snap down just a tiny bit. And because this edge is the front of the skirt, we do not want to have our little thread stitches coming through. So we want to sew this very carefully, and we're only going to be sewing it through a single layer of the fabric. So we're just sewing it through the inside part of this waistband. Let me make sure that's lined up. Yeah. Okay. So when you go in, make sure you were kind of going in at an angle to get started. And then we want to make sure that's not showing from the other side. Okay, so we're just going to go in kind of more at a side angle, whereas before we were going all the way through. We're just going to do this through the side. It's going to be a little tiny bit faster, but you do want to make sure that you just catch that one layer. That little tail's getting in the way. There we go. Okay, so that's the first part that is done. We're gonna go check on the other side. Still looks good, have not gone through. And now we are going to, we're just gonna loop under and not necessarily catch it. Well, I guess we can catch it. So we're just gonna go under the snap across the top and then come out the other snap hole to get the next part started. And this is on the ball side, so don't forget. And just double check it didn't go through. It did not. And this one's a little bit wonkier since I didn't put my marking exactly where it needed to be. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat this process. We're just catching it through this inside layer of the waistband. The waist facing, if you will, if you followed along with the other videos, that's what they called this piece, is the waist facing. So waistband facing. So let's go double check. Still not going through on the other side, so I'm doing a good job. I'm going to turn this so it's a little bit easier to sew. Okay. So we're just going to come through here a couple of times. Sometimes it's easier said than done. Okay, there we go. That's a little bit better. There we go. So you can see we've got that one held in place one more time. That was only 3. There we go. Pull that out. Okay, so now we're still going back in under here. And we're going to come out this other hole. There we go. Nope, I didn't catch it quite underneath. So I just catch that real quick and go up through that. There we go. And keep sewing these last 2 edges. And just like when we sewed on the socket part of the snap, this last time we're going to go around. And then I'm just going to catch it underneath here and go back in and tie a knot just to secure everything in place. Do it twice because double knots are always better than single knots. And then I'm going to go in with my thread snips and snip off the tail. Make sure you do not cut off the knot by accident because then you have to start the whole process again. And then I have my snap on one side with the ball, and then I have my socket over on this side. You can see how they line up, fit together. Waistband lies nice and smooth. So there you have it. Now you know how to sew on a snap. It's pretty easy and it gets a lot faster once you kind of get used to it. You've done a couple, you get used to holding it and sewing it in place. And as you can see, it worked. It's holding this front flap up in place like it's supposed to, so that then the other flap of the skirt can go across, and then that's going to be tied over here. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to click like and subscribe to my channel so you never miss a stitch. And if you've got questions but no one to answer them, head on over to Let's Talk Sewing for Beginners hosted by Sew Lounge. It's an interactive Facebook group where you can ask all the questions you want and I will get you some answers. I go live in the group on Wednesdays, so check the events for the schedule. Until we meet again, happy sewing!